The scissors bit through Vienna's hair in slow, deliberate cuts. Luna Margot circled her like a predator, each snip echoing across the silent pack gathering. Vianne knelt in the snow, wrists bound behind her back, blood from stone throws trickling down her temple. 50 wolves watched. No one moved to help. "This Omega killed my child," Margot announced, holding up a fistful of severed hair like a trophy. Weak blood, cursed blood. Vianne's lips bled where she'd bitten through to keep from screaming. She'd done nothing wrong. The stillbirth wasn't her fault, but truth didn't matter here. Alpha Garrett stepped forward, his voice cold as winter itself. "You are no longer Vianne Thorne. You are number 9, the cursed one." He pointed toward the dark forest. "Take the dead into the woods, or die here." Vianne looked toward her sister Clara standing in the crowd. Clara turned away. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. The burlap sack dragged behind Vianne like an anchor, leaving a dark trail through the snow. Inside, 3 wolf carcasses the pack's recent dead, deemed unworthy of burial rites. Her job was to dump them deep in the forest where scavengers would erase the evidence. Her hands had gone numb an hour ago. The rope binding her wrists had finally been cut before they'd shoved her toward the tree line. But the damage was done. Her fingers wouldn't bend properly. Blood had soaked through her thin dress from the stone impacts, and each step sent sharp pain through her ribs. At least 2 were broken. The forest swallowed her whole. Behind her, the sounds of the pack settlement faded laughter, the crackle of the great bonfire, music. They were celebrating her exile, celebrating the removal of their cursed member. Vianne's breath came in short, painful gasps. The cold had teeth. It bit through fabric and skin, settling into her bones. She knew the signs. Her body was shutting down. Hypothermia didn't announce itself with drama. It crept in quietly, stealing warmth degree by degree until you simply stopped. She had 2 hours, maybe less. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it brought a strange calm. 2 hours meant a definite end. No more wondering when the next humiliation would come. No more waiting for someone to see her worth. The sack caught on a root. Vianne stumbled, fell hard onto her knees. Pain exploded through her chest. She gasped, tasted blood. The fall had done something internal. She could feel it. Get up. Her mind ordered, but her legs wouldn't obey. This is it, she thought. This is where I die. She looked up at the darkening sky through the skeletal branches. Snow had begun to fall again, soft and relentless. It would cover her body by morning, by spring. Nothing would remain. Something made her turn her head. Through the trees, barely visible in the dying light, stood a structure. Vianne blinked, certain she was hallucinating. But no, it was real. A small cabin nearly hidden by overgrown pines and drifted snow. Its roof sagged on one side, and the windows were dark. But it had walls. It had a door. It had shelter. Her body moved before her mind caught up. She abandoned the sack of corpses and crawled. Her knees carved trenches through the snow. Her broken ribs screamed with each forward lurch. But the cabin grew closer. 20 feet, 15, 10. The door hung crooked on its hinges. Vianne pushed it open with her shoulder and collapsed across the threshold. Inside, the air was still, frozen, but protected from the wind. The single room was sparse, a stone hearth, a broken chair, shelves empty of everything but dust. But carved into the doorframe were symbols she didn't recognize, runes, old and deliberate. Whoever had lived here had left long ago, but they'd left it standing. Vianne dragged herself fully inside and kicked the door shut. The wind howled its protest outside. Her teeth chattered so violently she bit her tongue. She needed fire, needed it desperately. Her gaze swept the room and landed on a small stack of wood beside the hearth dry, preserved by the cabin's shelter, and there, on the mantel, a fire steel and flint. 20 minutes. That's how long it took her shaking hands to strike a spark. 20 minutes of failure, of sparks dying before they caught, of wanting to scream in frustration. But finally, a ember glowed. She nursed it with trembling breath, fed it splinters of wood, and watched it grow into flame. Heat. Blessed, painful heat. It burned against her frozen skin like punishment and salvation at once. Vianne huddled as close as she dared, feeling slowly returning to her extremities in waves of agony. She packed snow into her mouth for water, ignoring how it cramped her stomach. She had no food, no supplies, but she had warmth and walls. She had tonight. One night, she whispered to the empty cabin. Just let me have one night. The fire crackled in response. Shadows danced across the walls, across those strange runes carved deep into the wood. In the flickering light, they almost seemed to glow. Vianne's eyes grew heavy. Exhaustion pulled at her like an undertow. She shouldn't sleep. Sleep in this cold could still mean death. But her body had reached its limit. As she drifted, she heard it distant at first, then growing closer, howling. Not the normal sounds of wild wolves hunting. This was different, organized, purposeful. Something was being hunted in these woods. She jerked awake hours later to a new sound, scratching, right outside the door, then silence, then a heavy thud, like something large collapsing against the cabin wall. Vianne's heart hammered. She stared at the door, watching shadows move beneath the gap at its base. Something was out there, something big. The scratching came again, weaker this time, almost desperate. Against every survival instinct, Vianne stood, crossed to the door. Her hand touched the crude handle. She opened it. Snow blew in, and with it, the overwhelming scent of blood. A massive wolf lay collapsed across the threshold, its silver-gray fur matted crimson. 3 deep gashes carved through its side, its amber eyes locked onto hers, not with aggression, but with something that looked terrifyingly like pleading. Behind it, the snow was painted red for 30 feet, and in the distance, torchlight flickered between the trees. The hunters were coming. Vianne's first instinct was to slam the door shut. Wolves were why she was here. Wolves had destroyed her life. Every scar on her body, every humiliation, every moment of pain, all of it traced back to pack politics and alpha cruelty. But this wolf's eyes held something she recognized: desperation. The kind that came from knowing death was close and having no one to turn to. She knew that feeling intimately. "Damn it," she whispered. The wolf was enormous, easily 200 pounds of muscle and fur. Dragging it would be nearly impossible, but the torchlight in the woods was getting brighter. The hunters would be here in minutes. Vianne grabbed the wolf's front legs and pulled. It didn't budge. She repositioned, braced her feet, and hauled with everything she had. Her broken ribs shrieked in protest. Fresh blood warmed her side beneath her dress. But the wolf slid forward an inch, then another. The animal made no sound, didn't whimper or struggle, just watched her with those eerily intelligent amber eyes as she dragged its massive frame across the threshold. 5 minutes of agony later, she kicked the door shut and collapsed against it, gasping. Her vision swam. The room tilted. She was going to pass out. No, Not yet. The wolf lay in a spreading pool of its own blood. The 3 gashes across its ribs were deep, deliberately placed. These weren't claw marks from a fight. They were clean, precise, made by blades. Someone had tried to kill this wolf with surgical efficiency. Vianne crawled to the hearth and fed the fire until light filled the cabin. Then she turned to assess the damage properly. The wounds were catastrophic. She could see bone through the deepest cut. The wolf should already be dead from blood loss. Yet its chest still rose and fell, steady and controlled. "You're not a normal wolf," she said aloud. Its ear flicked toward her voice. Vianne had no medical supplies, no herbs, no bandages, no thread for sutures. She had a half-frozen cabin, a dying fire, and a dress that was more blood than fabric at this point. She tore a strip from her hem anyway. The snow outside was clean. She packed it against the worst wound, watching the wolf's face for reaction. Its jaw clenched, but it made no other movement. The stoicism was unnatural. Wild animals thrashed. They bit. They fought. This wolf endured like it understood she was trying to help. Vianne worked methodically, packing snow into each gash to slow the bleeding, then binding them with strips of her dress. Her hands shook from cold and exhaustion, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because if she stopped, she'd have to think about what she'd just done. She'd created a blood trail leading straight to this cabin. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The wolf had been bleeding for at least a quarter mile through the forest. Every drop was a breadcrumb for the hunters to follow, and by dragging it inside, by leaving her own tracks mixed with its blood in the snow, she'd marked herself as an accomplice. "Stupid," she hissed at herself. "Stupid, stupid." Voices cut through the night. "Blood trail goes this way. It's fresh. The beast can't be far." Vianne froze. The wolf's eyes opened fully, fixed on the door. Footsteps crunched through snow. Multiple sets. At least 3 men. Then they stopped. There. A gruff voice, close enough to make Vianne's heart stop. Old cabin. Blood leads right to it. Check for tracks. A pause. Then there are tracks. Small. Recent. Someone else is here. Vianne pressed her back against the wall beside the door. Mind racing. She had no weapons. No way to defend herself. The wolf was in no condition to fight. And these men, whoever they were, had already proven they could take down something twice her size. A fist pounded against the door. "Open up, we know you're in there." She didn't move. Didn't breathe. "We're hunting a wolf that belongs to Lord Blackwood. It's a dangerous animal, killed 3 men already. If you're harboring it, you're committing a crime against the crown." Crown what crown packs didn't answer to human royalty. This was pack territory, always had been, unless these weren't pack hunters. "Last warning," the voice barked. "Send the beast out or we burn you out." Vianne's gaze snapped to the wolf. It had pushed itself up onto its front legs, an impossible feat, given its injuries. Its lips pulled back from its teeth, not in aggression, but in what looked like frustration. Then it did something that stopped Vianne's heart. It began to change. Bones cracked and reformed, fur receded into skin. The massive frame condensed, reshaped, became human. The transformation took seconds, and when it finished, a man knelt where the wolf had been. He was older than her by perhaps 5 years, dark-haired and sharp-featured. The wounds remained 3 deep gashes across his ribs, still bleeding. He looked up at her with those same amber eyes. "Forgive me," he said, his voice rough from pain. "I had no choice." Vianne stumbled backward. You're a shifter. An alpha." "Yes." He pressed a hand to his side, blood seeping between his fingers. "And those men outside will kill us both if they get through that door." "Why should I help you?" Her voice shook. "You led them here." You used me. I didn't use you. I was dying. He met her gaze steadily. You chose to save me. That's on you, not me. Outside, the sound of flint striking, the smell of smoke. Fine, one of the hunters said. We do this the hard way. Vianne looked up. Through the gaps in the roof, she could see sparks rising into the night. They'd set the cabin's edge on fire. The man the Alpha pushed himself to his feet with visible effort. There's a way out, under the floor, but I need your help to reach it. Why should I trust you? Because in about 2 minutes, this cabin becomes our funeral pyre. He extended a bloodied hand. My name is Rowan Castellan, and right now, I'm the only chance you have at survival. Flames licked at the cabin's outer walls. Vianne looked at his hand, at the door beginning to smoke, at the impossible choice before her. She took his hand. Rowan pulled up the loose floorboard with his free hand, revealing a dark opening beneath. Stone steps descended into blackness. This cabin is older than it looks, he said, breathing hard. Built by the first wolves as a refuge. There's a tunnel system underneath. Vianne stared at the opening. How do you know that? Because I'm royal bloodline. We're taught the old places. He lowered himself onto the steps, hissing in pain. And because those runes carved on the doorframe are first wolf symbols. This is a sanctuary. The cabin walls crackled as fire caught properly. Smoke began filling the small space. Move or die, Rowan said. Your choice. Vianne grabbed the makeshift bandages she'd torn from her dress and followed him down. The tunnel was narrow, carved from earth and lined with ancient stones. The temperature dropped immediately. Behind them, she heard the cabin door splinter as the hunters broke through. Down here, one of them shouted. There's a passage. Rowan moved faster than any wounded man should be able to, one hand pressed to his bleeding ribs, the other trailing along the tunnel wall. Vianne struggled to keep pace in the darkness. Her broken ribs screamed with each breath. The tunnel forked. Rowan went left without hesitation. How do you know where to go? Vianne demanded. I don't. His voice echoed off stone. But they don't either. And I heal faster than humans. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter. The hunters were struggling with the narrow passage, slowed by their weapons and torches. After what felt like an eternity, Rowan stopped. Above them, roots hung down through cracks in the earth. Moonlight filtered through. Here, he said. He pushed upward, and a section of frozen ground gave way. They emerged into the forest, miles from the cabin. Behind them, a faint orange glow marked where the sanctuary burned. Rowan collapsed immediately, his strength finally giving out. Vianne knelt beside him, checking his wounds. The makeshift bandages were soaked through. He was still bleeding, though slower now. You need rest, she said. No. Need to keep moving. But even as he said it, his eyes closed. His body had reached its limit. Vianne looked around. They were deep in old-growth forest, far from any pack settlement. Dawn was still hours away. The temperature was dropping. If she left him here, he would die. If she stayed, they might both die. She thought of her pack, of how they'd abandoned her without a second thought. How easy it would be to do the same to him. But when she looked at his face, pale with blood loss, jaw clenched even in unconsciousness, she saw something familiar, someone fighting to survive against impossible odds. One night, she muttered. I'm only doing this for one night. She found a shallow cave carved into a hillside, half hidden by fallen trees. It wasn't much, but it would block the wind. She dragged Rowan inside, her body protesting every movement. No fire, too risky. The hunters might still be searching. Instead, she pressed moss and dead leaves against Rowan's wounds, then covered them both with pine boughs for insulation. Body heat would have to be enough. Hours passed. Vianne drifted in and out of a shallow, anxious sleep. Every sound made her jolt awake: a branch snapping, an owl's call, the distant howl of wild wolves. Just before dawn, Rowan stirred. "You stayed," he said, his voice rough. "Don't read into it." He managed a weak smile. "You could have left. Most people would have." "I'm not most people." Vianne checked his wounds. The bleeding had stopped. His skin was warmer, fever setting in, but not dangerously high yet. "You need at least 3 days to heal properly. Maybe more." "I don't have 3 days. Blackwood's hunters won't stop." "Who is Blackwood?" Rowan's jaw tightened. "A usurper. He killed my father and claimed the royal seat. I've been running for 2 months, gathering evidence, trying to find allies." He looked at her. "Those hunters work for him. They're not trying to capture me. They're trying to erase the last of the royal line." "That's not my problem." "No," Rowan agreed. "It's not. But you saved my life twice now, and I owe you a debt." "I don't want your debt." "Then what do you want?" He studied her face. "You're pack-born. I can smell it. But you're out here alone, half dead yourself, running from something." Vianne looked away. "That's none of your business." "Fair enough." Rowan shifted, wincing. "Here's my offer. Give me 3 days. Help me recover. In return, I'll give you protection from whatever pack you're hiding from. New identity if you want it. Territory where no one will touch you. You can't promise that if you're being hunted yourself. I can if I take back my throne." His amber eyes held hers. "And I will take it back. I just need time to heal first." Vianne wanted to refuse, wanted to walk away from this alpha and his politics and his wars. But the truth was, she had nowhere to go. No plan beyond surviving to tomorrow. 3 days. Then she'd disappear and never look back. "Fine," she said. 3 days. Then we're strangers." Agreed. They settled into silence. Outside, morning light began filtering through the trees. For the first time in months, Vianne felt something other than fear or pain. She felt useful. The feeling lasted until Rowan suddenly grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak but urgent. His eyes had gone wide, fixed on something on her skin. "What?" Vianne tried to pull away. "You're hurting me. Your wrist." His voice had changed, gone hollow. "That mark? How long have you had it?" Vianne looked down. Just above her pulse point was a small, crescent-shaped birthmark. She'd had it her entire life. "Since I was born." "Why?" Rowan's face had drained of color. "That's not a birthmark." "Of course it is." "It's a fated mate mark." His hand trembled. "And it's glowing." "That's impossible." Vianne jerked her hand back, but the mark continued to pulse with faint silver light. "I've had this my entire life. It never glowed before." "Because you never met your fated mate before." Rowan stared at the mark like it was a death sentence. "It only activates when both halves are in proximity." "Both halves." Vianne's stomach dropped. "You mean you have the matching mark?" "Yes." He pulled aside his torn shirt, revealing his left shoulder. There, identical in shape and size, was a crescent moon birthmark. As she watched, it began to glow with the same silver light. Vianne scrambled backward until her spine hit the cave wall. No, I don't want this. I don't want to be bound to anyone, especially not an alpha." "You think I want this?" Rowan's voice was sharp. "Fated mate bonds are rare. 1 in 10,000 wolves. and for royal bloodline." He stopped, jaw clenched. "There's a curse. If I complete the bond with my fated mate, my entire lineage falls. Every royal wolf descendant dies." The words hung in the cold air between them. "So this mark," Vianne said slowly, "means we're supposed to be together. But being together kills your entire family line." "Yes? Then why—" She stopped, realization dawning with sickening clarity. "The cabin. You said you knew it was a sanctuary. You said first wolves built it as a refuge." Rowan's silence was answer enough. "How long?" Vianne's voice shook. "How long have you known about me?" 6 months. The confession hit like a physical blow. "I've been tracking bloodlines," Rowan continued, not meeting her eyes. "Trying to find a way to break the royal curse. The old texts mentioned sanctuaries could sever unwanted bonds. When I discovered you were my fated mate, I researched your pack's territory, found the location of the old cabin. You let those hunters chase you there." Vianna's voice was hollow. "You knew I'd be there. I gambled that you would be. After your pack's exile ritual, you watched that horror and rage ward in her chest. You watched them humiliate me and did nothing. I couldn't interfere without revealing myself to Blackwood's spies." Rowan finally looked at her. "I needed you to go to the cabin on your own. I needed you to open the sanctuary. Only someone with pure intent can activate its magic." "Pure intent?" Vianne laughed, bitter and broken. "You mean you needed me desperate enough to save a dying stranger? You used my compassion as a tool?" "Yes." The honest admission somehow made it worse. "Everything," Vianne whispered. "The blood trail, the collapse, asking for my help, all of it was manipulation. The wounds were real. The hunters are real. But yes, I positioned myself to intersect with your path." Rowan's expression was unreadable. "The curse will kill me within a year if I don't break it. I didn't have the luxury of morality." Vianne lunged for the cave entrance. She made it 3 steps before wolves materialized from the morning mist. 10 of them, surrounding the cave in a perfect circle. They were sleek, well-fed, and moved with military precision. A female wolf stepped forward and shifted. The woman who emerged was beautiful in a way that made Vianne feel small and dirty by comparison. Tall, elegant, with silver blonde hair and ice blue eyes. She wore fine traveling clothes and an expression of amused contempt. "Rowan. Darling." Her voice was cultured, musical. "I've been searching everywhere for you." Rowan's entire body had gone rigid. "Ilara. You know her." Vianne looked between them. "Know her?" Ilara laughed. "I'm his fiancée, or did he forget to mention that part?" The cave seemed to tilt. Vianne grabbed the wall for support. "Political arrangement," Rowan said quickly, "to unite the northern and southern packs. It's not." "Not what?" Ilara's smile sharpened. "Not real, not valid. Tell me, did you explain to your little Omega that our wedding is in 3 months, that you've been engaged to me since you were 12 years old?" Vianne couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Every word was another knife between her ribs. "Vianne." Rowan reached for her. "Let me explain. Don't touch me." She slapped his hand away. "Don't ever touch me again." "How sweet," Ilara said. "She actually thought you cared." "Rowan, you should have told her from the start. Would have saved everyone time." She turned her cold gaze on Vianne. "Let me clarify. Little Omega, my fiancé needed to access a sanctuary to break his royal curse. You were simply the key to unlock it." "That's not entirely true," Rowan started. "Isn't it?" Ilara's eyebrow arched. "You told me yourself you'd do anything to break the curse, including seducing some pathetic, exiled Omega into helping you." Vianne felt something inside her crack. Not break, that would have been cleaner. This was a splintering, a fundamental destruction of something she hadn't even known she'd been building. Hope. She'd been stupid enough to feel hope. "I should thank you, actually," Alara continued, addressing Vianne. "You see, I couldn't have Rowan breaking the curse on his own. The royal bloodline makes him powerful, but the curse keeps him controllable. So I hired those hunters to make sure he'd be wounded when he reached the sanctuary, weak enough that he'd need help, desperate enough to manipulate someone vulnerable." "You," Rowan stared at her. "You're working with Blackwood." "Working for myself," Alara corrected. "Blackwood wants you dead. I want you alive but neutered. Once we're married, you'll be king in name while I hold the real power. It's a better arrangement for everyone." She pulled a silver knife from her belt and tossed it to Rowan's feet. "Now then, here's how this works. Kill your fated mate, prove your loyalty to our arrangement, and I'll let you live, refuse, and my wolves kill both of you." Her smile was serene. "Choose." Vianne closed her eyes. Of course it ended this way. She'd been stupid to think anything else was possible. Rowan picked up the knife. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Vianne didn't open her eyes. "Just make it quick." She heard him move closer, heard the whisper of the blade through air. Then pain, but not where she expected. Her eyes snapped open. Rowan had sliced his own palm open, blood welling dark and fast. He pressed his bleeding hand against her glowing, fated mate mark. "Sanctuary magic," he gasped. "Blood sacrifice plus fated mate contact. It'll activate the old protections." The mark exploded with light. A shockwave of pure force threw Alara's wolves back 20 feet. The air itself seemed to solidify into a barrier, humming with ancient power. "Run!" Rowan grabbed Vianne's hand. They ran. Behind them, Alara's screams of rage echoed through the forest. "Find them, I want them both dead." They ran until Vianne's broken ribs felt like they'd pierce her lungs, until Rowan's breathing turned wet and labored, until he finally collapsed 5 miles from the cave, blood from the ritual draining him faster than his supernatural healing could compensate. Vianne stood over him, chest heaving, staring down at the man who'd used her, lied to her, manipulated every moment they'd shared, the man who'd just chosen her over his own survival. Why? The word came out broken. "Why save me? You could have killed me, could have had everything you wanted." Rowan looked up at her, eyes already glazing with blood loss and exhaustion. "Because somewhere between the lies," he whispered, "I stopped pretending." Then his eyes closed, and Vianne was alone again. Alone with an unconscious alpha who'd betrayed her. Alone with a glowing mark that bound her to him, whether she wanted it or not. Alone with the choice that would define everything that came next. Vianne stared at Rowan's unconscious form and felt nothing. That was the worst part. Not anger, not betrayal, just a vast, hollow emptiness where her emotions used to be. She should leave. Every rational thought screamed at her to walk away. He'd used her, lied to her, manipulated her desperation for his own survival. He deserved to die alone in the snow, just as her pack had intended for her. But her feet wouldn't move. "I hate you," she whispered to his unconscious face. "I hate that you made me hope." The forest offered no response, just wind and silence and the distant howls of wolves Alara's pack, still hunting. Vianne knelt and checked Rowan's wounds. The gashes had reopened during their run. Blood soaked through the makeshift bandages, steaming in the cold air. His breathing was shallow, rattling. Fever burned beneath his skin. He would die without intervention. Hours, maybe less. "You don't deserve my help," she said. She started gathering pine boughs anyway. There was no shelter here, No cave, no cabin, nothing but exposed forest and falling snow. Vianne built a crude lean-to against a fallen tree, her hands clumsy with cold and exhaustion. Every movement sent pain shooting through her broken ribs. The world tilted and swayed. When had she last eaten? 2 days, 3. It didn't matter. Food was a luxury for people with futures. She dragged Rowan under the lean-to and covered them both with branches. It wasn't enough. The temperature was dropping fast. Even with supernatural healing, hypothermia would kill him before blood loss did. Body heat. She needed to share body heat. Vianne wanted to scream at the unfairness of it. Forced proximity with the man who'd orchestrated her suffering. But dying to preserve her dignity seemed pointless when she'd already lost everything else. She pressed herself against his side, skin to skin beneath the layers of torn fabric. His fever heat was almost painful against her frozen limbs. Hours crawled past. Vianne drifted in and out of consciousness, too cold to properly sleep, too exhausted to stay alert. At some point, she realized she was crying, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Why do I keep living?" she asked the darkness. "Everyone I save betrays me. Everyone I trust destroys me." Her sister's face flashed through her mind. Clara, turning away, refusing to acknowledge Vianne's existence as the pack tore her apart. That had hurt worse than any of Garrett's words. "I should have died in that cabin," Vianne whispered. "Would have been kinder." Rowan stirred, delirious with fever. His eyes opened but didn't focus. "Can't. Let them find." "Shh." Vianne pressed snow against his burning forehead. Pointless gesture. Meaningless comfort. But her hands moved on their own. Tracked her. 6 months. Rowan's voice was thick, slurred. Watched from the shadows. Knew when she'd be exiled. Vianney's hand stilled. What? Had to. Time it perfectly. His head tossed. Hunters chase me. To the cabin? Exactly when she'd be there. Ice that had nothing to do with weather spread through Vianne's chest. Everything calculated. Rowan continued, lost in fever dreams. Even the wounds. Let them cut deep. Make her pity me. Stop talking. Vianne's voice cracked, but he couldn't stop. The fever had unlocked something, spilling secrets like poison from a wound. Didn't want to? Had to survive. Curse would kill. She was the key. Every word was a blade. Every confession another piece of evidence that nothing had been real. "I trusted you," Vianne breathed. "After everything. I chose to stay. I chose." Followed her to the pack gathering, Rowan whispered. Watched them. Shame her. Cut her hair. His face twisted. Should have stopped them. But needed her. Desperate. Willing to do anything. Vianne stood abruptly, stumbling away from the lean-to. Her chest felt crushed, airless. She'd known he'd manipulated her, but hearing the depth of it, the premeditation, the cold calculation. She bent over and vomited bile into the snow. When she straightened, she saw lights through the trees, torches, many of them. Ilara's pack had found them, but as the figures emerged from the darkness, Vianne's blood turned colder still. Not just Ilara's wolves. Garrett led them. Alpha of her former pack, the man who'd exiled her. Behind him walked Margot, still beautiful in her cruelty. And behind them, Clara, her little sister, eyes downcast, 2 packs, united. Well, Garrett's voice carried through the frozen air. The cursed one, still clinging to life like a parasite. Ilara appeared beside him, her wolves flanking both sides. We've made an arrangement. Your old pack wants you dead for the shame you've brought them. I want the royal bloodline eliminated. Our goals align beautifully. 20 wolves surrounded Vianne's pathetic shelter. She was unarmed, broken, starving. Rowan was unconscious and defenseless. There was no escape this time. "Kneel," Garrett commanded. Vianne looked at him, at the man who'd raised her, who'd called her daughter once, before the stillbirth gave him an excuse to dispose of her. "No," Margot laughed, still defiant. "The weakness in you runs deep." "I'm not weak." Vianne's voice was hollow. "Weakness would have been dying when you wanted me to. I'm still here. Not for long." Alara drew a silver blade. "Any last words?" Vianne looked at Rowan's unconscious form, at the man who'd used her, betrayed her, yet somehow chosen her in the end, at Clara, who still wouldn't meet her eyes, at the mark on her wrist, still glowing faintly in the darkness. Something Rowan had said echoed in her memory. Fated mate marks only appear on those strong enough to bear them. Not weak, never weak, just broken by people who feared what she could become. "Yes," Vianne said quietly. "I have last words." She stood, legs trembling, ribs screaming. "You want me to kneel to beg?" Her voice grew stronger. "I've spent my entire life on my knees for people like you, people who take and call it love, call it protection, call it necessity." The mark on her wrist pulsed brighter. "But I'm done kneeling." "Then die standing," Garrett snarled. Alara stepped forward, blade raised. Vianne's mark exploded with crimson light. Power ancient, furious, undeniable erupted from her core, like a star being born. The ground beneath her feet cracked. Trees bent away. Wolves yelped and scrambled back. And for the first time in her life, Vianne wasn't afraid. The power coursing through Vianne's veins was nothing like she'd imagined. It wasn't gentle, wasn't warm. It was fury crystallized, ancient and absolute, demanding to be unleashed. Her mark blazed red, spreading up her arm in intricate patterns, runes identical to those carved in the sanctuary cabin. The 20 wolves surrounding her had frozen, caught between instinct to attack and instinct to flee. Impossible. Alara's voice had lost its musical quality. "She's an Omega. She can't—" She was never an Omega. Garrett's face had gone pale. She was sealed. All eyes turned to him. "What did you do?" Margot's voice was ice. Garrett didn't answer. He stared at Vianne like seeing her for the first time, or perhaps seeing her truly after years of willful blindness. The power inside Vianne screamed for release. She could feel it, the capability to burn, to destroy, to make them all hurt the way she'd been hurt. One thought, and this forest would become a graveyard. "Tell them," Vianne said quietly. "Tell them what you did to me. I sealed your power when you were 5 years old." Garrett's voice was hollow. "You healed a dead pup, brought it back from death itself. The elders saw and they were terrified. Ancient healer bloodlines attract attention from royals, from hunters, from anyone who'd use that power for war. So you made me weak instead. I made you invisible." Garrett took a step forward. Several wolves growled warnings. He ignored them. "If royal families knew what you were, they'd have taken you, bred you like livestock to produce more healers, or killed you to prevent enemies from using you. I chose a third option, hide you in plain sight as the weakest Omega in the pack. By humiliating me." Vianne's power pulsed brighter. "By letting them abuse me for 22 years, by keeping you alive." Garrett's voice cracked. "Every insult, every degradation, it made you unremarkable, unmemorable, safe. I was never safe." The words tore from Vianne's throat. "I was tortured every single day by people who should have protected me. You let your own mate cut my hair in front of the pack. You watched them stone me and did nothing. I did what I had to. You were supposed to be my father." The words hung in the frozen air. Clara gasped. Margot's face twisted. The gathered wolves murmured in shock. Garrett closed his eyes. "Yes, I'm your biological father. Your mother died in childbirth. A human woman I loved before I was forced into political marriage with Margot. When you were born showing healer marks, I had to choose. Claim you as my daughter and paint a target on your back, or hide you among the pack orphans. You chose wrong." Vianne's voice was empty. "You thought hiding me would save me. Instead, you condemned me to a lifetime of abuse." "I know." Garrett's shoulders sagged. "I thought if I could just keep you alive until you were old enough to leave, to disappear into human cities where pack politics couldn't touch you. I thought I had time. Then the stillbirth happened and the elders demanded a scapegoat. I thought exile was mercy. I thought—" "You thought I'd die quietly in the forest," Vianne finished. "Convenient." The impossible choice crystallized before her. Garrett had destroyed her life trying to save it. His methods were unforgivable, but his intent had been protection. However twisted, did that matter? Did good intentions erase 22 years of suffering behind her? Rowan groaned, consciousness returning. Vianne. She didn't turn, couldn't turn. Because here was another impossible choice: trust the man who'd manipulated her existence but chosen her in the end, or walk away from the one person who'd seen her worth, even while using her. "I can kill you all right now." Vianne raised her hands and power crackled between her fingers. "Every single one of you, for what you did, for what you took from me." No one moved. Even Alara's practiced composure had cracked. "But if I kill you," Vianne continued, voice shaking, "I become the monster you always said I was. I prove that power corrupts, that healers are dangerous." She thought of the cabin, of sitting alone in the dark, hour after hour, choosing to live when death would have been easier. Every log placed, every fire started, every sunrise survived. She'd thought herself weak then, pathetic, clinging to life because she was too cowardly to let go. But that wasn't weakness. That was strength beyond measure. "You tried to break me," Vianne said. "All of you. You tried to make me believe I was worthless, cursed, a burden to be disposed of." The mark on her wrist pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "But I survived. Not because of you. In spite of you. I built shelter with broken hands. I saved lives that tried to take mine. I kept choosing life even when you gave me every reason to choose death." The power inside her shifted, changed. No longer just fury, now purpose. "So here's my choice." Vianne's eyes met Garrett's, then Alara's, then found Clara in the crowd, tears streaming down her sister's face. "I choose to be better than all of you." She turned to where Rowan had managed to push himself upright, blood-soaked and barely conscious. "And I choose to fight for something worth saving." A new sound cut through the night. Hoofbeats, dozens of them. Through the trees came soldiers, human soldiers with silver weapons and cold eyes. At their head rode a man in fine armor, his face sharp with cruel intelligence, Lord Blackwood. "How touching," he called, voice carrying across the clearing. "A family reunion and a lover's quarrel all at once. But I'm afraid this party ends now." He gestured, and 50 soldiers spread out, surrounding everyone. "Rowan Castellan, you're wanted for treason, and the rest of you wolves, you're harboring a fugitive. The penalty is death." Garrett's pack tensed. Alara's wolves growled. Even in their conflict, they were still predators facing a threat. Blackwood smiled. "Oh, good. You'll all die together. How poetic. Vianne looked at the impossible odds, at the three armies converging on this single point, at Rowan, who could barely stand, at her supposed father and his pack of tormentors, at Clara, terrified and small. She looked at her hands, still glowing with ancient power she barely understood. Vianne. Rowan's voice was weak but certain. Whatever you decide to do, I'm with you. The simplicity of it broke something inside her. Or perhaps fixed something that had always been broken. She wasn't alone anymore, even surrounded by enemies, even facing death. She had a choice. And for the first time in her life, it was entirely hers to make. Vianne stepped forward, power blazing. Who wants to die first? Blackwood's soldiers advanced in perfect formation, silver weapons gleaming in the torchlight. Behind Vianne, the two wolf packs stood frozen in an impossible standoff, enemies forced to face a common threat. We need to move, Rowan gasped, struggling to his feet. Now. Where? Vianne's power crackled around her, unstable and raw. She could feel it burning through her reserves like wildfire. We're surrounded. The cabin. Rowan pressed a hand to his bleeding side. The sanctuary. If we can reach it, it's 5 miles away through enemy territory. Garrett's voice cut through the chaos. She'll never make it carrying you. Then I'll slow them down. Rowan's eyes met Vianne's. You run. No. The word came out harder than Vianne intended. I'm done running. An arrow whistled past her head. Blackwood's archers had begun firing. Vianne's power erupted instinctively, forming a shield of shimmering energy. Arrows shattered against it, but each impact drained her. She could feel the cost in her bones. Listen to me. Rowan grabbed her arm. The sanctuary is the only place with enough ancient magic to protect us. But to activate it fully, not just a temporary barrier, you need royal blood and healer power combined. We have to get there together. You can barely walk, so you'll carry me. Rowan's grim smile held no humor, like you've been carrying everything else. A wolf's howl split the air. One of Alara's pack had attacked a soldier. Chaos erupted. In the confusion, Clara pushed through the crowd toward Vianne. Her face was streaked with tears, but her jaw was set with determination. I'll help. Clara's voice shook but held firm. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I was a coward. But let me do this. Please. Vianne stared at her sister, at the girl who'd turned away when it mattered most. Why now? Because I've been afraid my whole life. Clara's hands clenched into fists. Afraid of the pack. Afraid of standing out. Afraid of being like you, different and targeted. But I'm more afraid of living the rest of my life knowing I abandoned you twice. Margot appeared beside Clara, her expression unreadable. I'll come too. Why? Vianne's voice was sharp. So you can cut my hair again? Because I was wrong. Margot's composure cracked. About everything. Garrett told me tonight, told me you're his daughter. That we've been torturing his child for years while I thought... She stopped. Swallowed. I thought you were just another orphan. I didn't know. But not knowing doesn't erase what I did. So let me help fix it. 3 wolves from Alara's pack stepped forward. Young males with defiant eyes. True fated mates are sacred, one said. We won't let politics destroy that. Alara screamed in rage. Traitors, I'll have you all executed. You'll have to catch us first. The wolf grinned. Garrett moved to stand between Vianne and Blackwood's advancing forces. His eyes met hers across the chaos. I failed you as a father. Let me succeed as a shield. Vianne's throat tightened. You can't hold them all. I don't need to hold them. Just slow them. Garrett shifted into his massive wolf form larger than any she'd seen, alpha power radiating like heat. "Get my daughter to safety." The word daughter said aloud, acknowledged publicly for the first time, nearly broke her. "Go!" Garrett charged into Blackwood's forces. Vianne ran. She hauled Rowan's arm over her shoulder, channeling power to strengthen her legs, and bolted into the forest. Clara and Margot flanked them. The 3 rebel wolves took rear guard positions. Behind them, the sounds of battle, snarling, screaming, the clash of steel on claw. "They're following!" Clara gasped. Vianne risked a glance back. At least 30 soldiers had broken formation to pursue them, and Alara's remaining wolves, faces twisted with fury. "Faster!" Rowan urged, though his weight was slowing them dangerously. An arrow caught one of the rebel wolves in the shoulder. He yelped but kept running. Another arrow. This one found Margot's thigh. She stumbled, fell. "Leave me," she shouted. "Keep going." Clara hesitated, looking back. "Move." Vianne's power flared, creating a temporary barrier between them and their pursuers. It bought them 10 seconds, maybe less. They ran through darkness and snow, lungs burning, muscles screaming. Rowan's blood left a trail easy to follow. The cabin was still miles away. "I can't hold the barriers much longer," Vianne gasped. Each use drained her faster. Her vision was starting to blur at the edges. "The power, it's burning me out." "Just get to the sanctuary," Rowan urged. "We only need to make it inside." A wolf caught up one of Alara's fastest. It lunged at Clara. One of the rebel wolves intercepted, taking the attack meant for her. They went down in a tangle of teeth and fur. His last act was shoving Clara forward. "Keep running." 2 defenders down. 30 enemies still pursuing. The cabin appeared through the trees ahead, or what remained of it. The fire had gutted the interior, but the stone foundation stood, and those ancient runes carved into the surviving beams still glowed faintly. There. Vianne pointed. They were 50 yards away when the cavalry caught up. Horses, faster than wolves, thundered through the forest. Blackwood rode at their head, sword drawn. "You're finished, Castellan." Garrett appeared from the trees, bloodied but alive. He charged the horses head on. "Run!" His roar shook the forest. 25 yards. Arrows filled the air. One grazed Vianne's shoulder. Clara cried out as another caught her arm. 15 yards. The remaining rebel wolves threw themselves at the soldiers, buying seconds with their lives. 10 yards. Garrett went down under a coordinated assault. 6 soldiers. Too many. 5 yards. Vianne's power was nearly gone. She could feel herself fading, burning from the inside out. But the cabin was right there. A sword flashed. Garrett, in human form, broken and bleeding, grabbed the nearest soldier's blade with his bare hands. "Go." He roared one final time. Blood poured between his fingers. "Go, my daughter." The words hit Vianne like a physical blow. The first time he'd claimed her. The last time he'd speak. She watched Garrett fall to his knees, surrounded by enemies, buying her 3 final seconds. Vianne. Rowan. And Clara stumbled across the cabin's threshold. The ancient runes blazed to life, but outside, Alara's wolves had arrived. Blackwood's remaining forces surrounded the structure. 50 enemies against 3 exhausted survivors. "Place your blood on the altar," Rowan gasped, pointing at the exposed foundation where ancient stones formed a ritual circle. "It's our only chance." Vianne looked at the altar, at the runes carved into it. "What does it say?" Rowan's face went pale. 2 souls, 1 fate, sacrifice offered, sanctuary granted. Sacrifice. Clara's voice was small. "What kind of sacrifice?" "Life force," Rowan met Vianney's eyes. Whoever activates the full sanctuary becomes its guardian spirit, physical form traded for immortal protection. They'll be bound here forever, alive but not truly living. Outside, Blackwood's voice rang out. You have 30 seconds to surrender before we burn you out. Vianne looked at her hands, still glowing faintly with dying power. She looked at Rowan, the man who'd used her but chosen her. She looked at Clara, the sister who'd failed her but come back. She looked at the altar that demanded everything. I'll do it, Vianna said. No. Rowan grabbed her arm. I've lived long enough. You're the last royal, you're needed. Vianney pulled away. I'm just an Omega nobody wanted. That's not true. Clara's voice cracked. You're not nobody. You're my sister. You're Vianne. Rowan's voice was broken. Please don't do this. We'll find another way. There is no other way. Vianne placed her hands on the altar. The stone was warm beneath her palms, alive. And maybe this is what I was meant for. Not to be loved, but to be the shelter for others to find love. She looked at Rowan one last time. Live well. Then she pressed her bleeding wrist to the altar stone. The world exploded into light.
Light erupted from the altar like a star being born. Vianne's consciousness expanded beyond her body. She could feel the entire sanctuary, every stone, every carved rune, every breath of wind through the ruins. The ancient magic recognized her, welcomed her, began the transformation that would make her its eternal guardian. And it hurt. Not physical pain. Worse, the slow dissolution of self. Her memories starting to fade at the edges, her body becoming translucent. The price of protection was everything she was. No. Rowan threw himself at the altar, pressing his bleeding hand beside hers. I won't let you do this alone. The light exploded brighter. Royal blood and healer power, mixing on ancient stone. The sanctuary had never felt both at once. The magic writhed, uncertain, recalculating. Rowan, stop! Vianne tried to pull away but couldn't. They were locked together now, the ritual binding them. You'll die with me. Then we die together. His eyes held hers. I'm done choosing survival over what matters. The light reached critical mass. Vianne could feel the sanctuary's full power awakening not just a barrier, but something far older. The magic of the first wolves, who'd built these refuges as sacred ground where violence itself couldn't exist. The light exploded outward in a wave. It swept over the ruined cabin, through the forest, encompassing everyone within a mile radius. Blackwood's soldiers froze mid-charge. Alara's wolves stopped snarling. Even the dying fell still, suspended in the magic's embrace. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then the sanctuary spoke. Not in words. In truth, ancient magic that stripped away wusaos and pretense, forcing everyone to see themselves and each other clearly for the first time. Blackwood saw himself not the righteous lord he pretended to be, but a murderer who'd killed Rowan's father for ambition. The magic showed his crimes to everyone present, undeniable and complete. His soldiers saw it too, their faces twisted in horror. The man they'd served was a usurper and a tyrant. One by one, they dropped their weapons. Blackwood screamed in rage and lunged forward, but the sanctuary's barrier stopped him cold. Violence couldn't exist within these borders anymore. His sword dissolved to rust in his hands. No! He clawed at the invisible wall. This isn't over. I'll return with an army. I'll burn this entire forest. The sanctuary's response was swift and absolute. Roots erupted from the ground, wrapping around Blackwood's limbs, pulling him down. Not killing the sanctuary wouldn't permit death within its bounds, but imprisoning. He'd remain here, frozen, until human authorities could retrieve him for trial. His muffled screams faded as the earth claimed him. Alara was next. The magic revealed her machinations, how she'd hired the hunters, orchestrated Rowan's wounds, manipulated everyone for power. Her remaining wolves saw their alpha's true nature and turned away in disgust. Wait. Alara's composure shattered. I can explain I did what I had to. But the wolves were already leaving, abandoning their corrupted leader, without followers, without power. Alara was just another exile. The sanctuary let her go. She fled into the darkness alone. Then the magic turned to the fallen. Garrett lay in the snow, barely breathing. The sanctuary's light touched him, and wounds began to close. Not healing perfectly, he'd bear those scars forever, but enough to survive. His eyes opened. Found Vianne. My daughter. He whispered. I'm so sorry. The magic judged him, showed his choices, the fear that made him seal his own child's power, the cowardice that made him stand by while she suffered, but also the love that made him sacrifice himself in the end. Complicated, flawed, human, the sanctuary's verdict: redemption possible, but never forgiveness owed. Garrett wept. Margot stirred next, arrow still lodged in her thigh. The magic pulled it free and sealed the wound. She looked at Vianne with new eyes, saw the years of abuse through the victim's perspective, felt the weight of every cruelty she'd inflicted. I can never take it back, Margot said, voice breaking, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be better. The rebel wolves who died defending them weren't dead after all. The sanctuary had caught them at the moment of death and held them suspended. Now it breathed life back into their bodies. They gasped awake, confused but whole. Clara crawled to where Vianne knelt at the altar, still glowing, still fading. Please, Clara begged the magic. Don't take her. Take me instead. I'm the one who failed her. The light pulsed around them, considering. Then a voice ancient beyond measure spoke directly into their minds. Sacrifice recognized. True fated mates offered their lives for sanctuary. But this magic was never meant to demand death. Only devotion. The light began to shift. Change. Vianne of No Pack. Rowan Castellan. You are offered a choice. 3 images appeared in the glowing air. First, Vianne as guardian spirit, immortal but formless, bound to protect this place forever, while Rowan lived on without her. Second, both returned to mortal forms, powerless, living normal lives, but aging and dying as humans do. Third, share the burden, become twin guardians, immortal, powerful, bound to this sanctuary together for eternity. Vianne looked at Rowan, saw her own choice reflected in his eyes. Together, they said as one. The light embraced them. The transformation was painless this time. Not a dissolution, but an evolution. Their bodies solidified, but changed stronger, more luminous, marked with the same runes that covered the sanctuary stones. Their fated mate marks merged, spreading across both their bodies in intricate patterns. 2 souls, 1 fate, bound not by curse but by choice. The sanctuary settled around them like a mantle. They stood hand in hand, as the magic completed its work. They could feel every living thing within these borders, could sense pain and heal it, could identify threats and turn them away, could offer shelter to anyone who sought it honestly. Immortal guardians of a sacred place. The gathered wolves, what remained of 3 fractured packs, knelt. "What now?" Clara asked, still kneeling in the snow. Vianne looked at her sister, at the wolves who'd betrayed and abandoned her, at the ruins of a cabin that had saved her life. "Now," she said, her voice carrying new authority, "we build something better." She raised her hand, and the sanctuary responded. The cabin rebuilt itself, not as it had been, but grander. Walls rose from foundation stones. A roof assembled from fallen timber. Windows appeared, glowing with warm light. Rooms for the lost, shelter for the broken, haven for anyone the world had discarded. Rowan's hand tightened around hers. A true sanctuary. For everyone. Vianne agreed. She looked at Garrett, broken and weeping. At Margot, carrying guilt like physical weight. At Clara, desperate for redemption. Everyone who wants to be better than they were. The choice was theirs now. Stay and rebuild, or leave and carry their shame alone. One by one, they chose to stay. And as dawn broke over the forest, Vianne stood with Rowan in the doorway of their impossible sanctuary, watching broken people begin the hard work of becoming whole. She'd been abandoned by everyone. She'd survived anyway, and now finally she was home. 1 year later, the sanctuary thrived. What had been ruins now stood as a beacon. Wolves from across the territories came seeking refuge. Omegas fleeing abusive packs. Alphas broken by war. Children orphaned by politics. Vianne turned no one away. She'd learned what her old pack never understood. Family wasn't blood or hierarchy. It was choice. It was the people who stayed when staying was hard. Clara ran the sanctuary's daily operations, earning her sister's trust one honest day at a time. Margot taught young wolves their worth, channeling her regret into purpose. Garrett's spirit appeared sometimes in dreams, finally at peace. Rowan ruled as king from the sanctuary's heart, transforming wolf society with compassion learned from Vianne. Together they proved that power didn't require cruelty. On quiet evenings, Vianne stood by the cabin's rebuilt hearth, the same hearth where she'd nearly died alone. Now it warmed dozens of souls who'd also been abandoned, also survived, also chosen to build something better from their pain. They hadn't needed destiny to save them. They'd saved themselves, and that made all the difference. Have you ever been wrongly accused or abandoned by people who should have protected you? How did you find the strength to keep going?